There aren't many men in military history who have been nominated for their country's highest award for combat bravery, twice in the same calendar week, like U.S. Army Medal of Honor recipient Lieutenant Benjamin Wilson. Then again, there also aren't a lot of men who can kill 5 enemy combatants with a shovel after having his rifle ripped from his hands by a swarming horde of combat-hardened enemy soldiers. On a warm evening in June 1951, Lieutenant Wilson was ordered to retake a large commanding hill that overlooked the Huacan Reservoir outside of Nadong Ri. The terrain feature was affectionately known as Hell Hill. It wasn't going to be an easy objective to capture. It was steep, the approach was dangerous, and it was heavily fortified by hundreds of North Korean and Chinese troops dug into formidable defensive entrenchments. Under covering fire from artillery, machine guns, mortars, and rifles, Lieutenant Wilson gripped his weapon, and ordered the men of I Company to follow him. Charging forward up a steep, muddy incline in the dead heat of the Korean summer, Wilson was met immediately by an unrelenting barrage of machine gun and mortar fire that ripped up the scenery around him in every direction. Fearlessly ignoring the imminent death whizzing around him in every direction, Wilson led his men up the hill, and throwing grenades, firing his rifle, and then diving headlong into the first enemy entrenchment. He came face to face with 4 guys carrying full auto submachine guns, killed them, then waved for the rest of his team to come up and reinforce the position. Then, once everyone was consolidated, he ordered them to fix bayonets. They were going further up the hill. Charging forward, Lieutenant Wilson and the men of I Company stormed up Hell Hill with the explicit intention of destroying all enemy combatants. Heavy enemy fire came in from all directions, but Lieutenant Wilson and his crew stormed ahead, hurled themselves at the enemy, and overran them, leaving nearly 30 Chinese and North Korean troops dead on the field. When the Chinese tried to counterattack, Lieutenant Wilson single-handedly charged them, rushing head first with rifle and grenades, killing 7 more guys, wounding 3, and driving off the attack by himself. Wilson once again gathered his men and made a third charge, but as he neared within 20 yards of the enemy he took a couple hits of shrapnel and bullet fragments, wounding him severely. The enemy fire was now fully focused down on him and his men. Wounded and unable to continue, Lieutenant Wilson's men grabbed him and started pulling him back from the fight, but, even though he was seriously wounded, Lieutenant Wilson still laid down covering fire for his troops as they pressed the attack. When Lieutenant Wilson, who was bleeding profusely and being carried down the hill on a stretcher, heard that I Company's commander and the commander of 1st Platoon had been incapacitated and the attack was faltering, he climbed out of the stretcher and ran back up the hill to lead the attack himself. Bleeding, wounded, and exhausted, Lieutenant Wilson grabbed his rifle and ran forward, finding new strength in a sudden surge of adrenaline and rage. He ran straight into the most ferocious fighting on the front, shooting at anything that moved, and then waded bayonet first into enemy forces. Slashing, stabbing, and firing, Wilson killed 3 enemy troops in hand-to-hand combat before the enemy troops swarmed him, grabbed the